All right, back out to the United Nations. Live look now where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy wrapping up his address to the UN General Assembly. We carried it live right here on National Report.
For reaction, let's welcome in Ivana Stradner, a Russia Program Fellow for the Foundation for Defense for Democracies. Ivana, welcome, and thanks so much for coming on. In case you missed part of the speech, we did want to play it for you and our audience here. Here's the Ukrainian president speaking about the peaceful nation that they hope to be in the midst of this war. Watch this.
There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons. No Ukrainian choice this kind of reality. And knowing our people, they would have chosen a different priority. Ukrainians are peaceful people, but they are people who want to live freely in their own independent country. That's why we invest in defense. For many nations, there is simply no other way left.
So, Ivana, your thoughts on that part of what the Ukrainian president had to say?
The President Zelenskyy gave a very strong speech, reminding the world that Russia started this war in Ukraine, but more importantly, that we are living in a very dangerous time through the most destructive arms race in human history. And President Zelenskyy is absolutely right that international institutions, such as including the United Nations, have limited power to end wars. But the only thing that can end wars are actually weapons. And he also reminded the world how Russia has been testing drones and making drones, and that we are also in a drone arm race. And more also importantly, that we are also in AI drone race. So he has really reminded the world that we live in a very dangerous times where Russia, along with its allies such as North Korea, Iran, and China, are trying to make a world a very different place through also drones and new technologies that they are testing and building together.
Yeah, it wasn't just about the war with Russia that President Zelenskyy spoke about. He spoke about the hostages still in the hands of Hamas between that war. And that's coming up on almost 2 years. Watch this.
Look at Israel. Nearly 2 years have passed and hostages still haven't been freed. They must be freed, but even that still hasn't happened. And for years, there have been no real answers to other threats, either chemical weapons and famine used as a weapon.
And he mentioned chemical weapons there, which I thought was interesting at the end. That is, biological weapons is something that President Trump mentioned when he addressed the United Nations. Overall thoughts on mentioning Hamas, the hostages there, as you've seen so many different countries stepping up to recognize a Palestinian statehood amidst all of this still there, amidst the hostages still being held captive.
Absolutely. President Zelenskyy has reminded the world how today's new threats are emerging, and that we also face hybrid wars, not only coming from Russia, but also other parts of the world. And about hostages that's happening, it's devastating. He also mentioned bioweapons, and that's also something that I'm very concerned about, because Russia has been using a war that is below the threshold of war, even including, for example, what just recently happened with drones entering NATO's territory. Why? Because it's plausible deniability. And Russia has a long track record of building very strong bioweapons equipments. And now, for example, what Putin also offered yesterday about a new nuclear deal, don't fall for that, because Russia does not have to comply with any rules. And we have to also understand that for Russia, nuclear weapons are psychological weapons. That's something President Trump perfectly understood, that when last time Moscow threatened with nuclear weapons, Trump responded perfectly by putting Moscow on the defense and threatening with nuclear submarines. So basically remove that threat. And that's also something that we need to understand when it comes to also bioweapons and Russian games.
Yes, absolutely. The UN continues on with the General Assembly throughout the remainder of the week. But again, President Trump no longer in New York City. He's back at the White House, and Zelenskyy just wrapping up his remarks here today. Ivana Stradner, thank you very much for your analysis. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.